Okay, thank you very much, Anne, for that very warm welcome on a nice chilly western Southland morning. It's great to be here at Tuatapere and great to be here in this hall and good to hear about the historical significance of this great building too. And it's nice and cosy as well, so I think we'll warm up nicely. But I'll just kick off the meeting with our opening karakia. Mā te whakarongo, mā te kōrero, mā te nako, mā te wairua, mā te manaki mai, mā te manaki atu, ka karawai, te hei, Māori order. Through listening, through talking, from the heart, from the spirit, through giving and receiving respect, understanding will bloom. This is the essence of life. Welcome along, everyone. Just echoing and the chair's welcome this morning. It's great to be here and halfway through June already. So anyone that doesn't know, the toilets are down the hall. Ladies are at the front, and in the foyer is the gents. And an earthquake, if you can get under the tables, good luck. Drop, cover and hold. If we need to evacuate, we can get out the fire exits. There's a few of them there. If you're in doubt, follow Anne. And evacuation is at the front. And if we can just make sure that our phones are turned to silent and these are being recorded for the purpose of live video, both live streaming and downloading. So by remaining in this meeting, you are consenting to being filmed by the public. I've got an apology from Councillor Byers. Are there any further apologies? Someone like to move that the apology is accepted? Thank you, Councillor Runcorn. Seconded, Councillor Menzies. All those in favour, please indicate. Aye. Anyone against? It's carried. Do we have any leave of absence coming up? Councillor Chamberlain?
28th of June, 10th of July.
Cool. Anything further? Councillor Runcorn?
7th of July to the 25th of July.
Anything further? Someone like to move that those are accepted? Councillor Buckerai, seconded by Councillor Fraser. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? That is carried. Do we have any items on the agenda today with a conflict of interest for anyone? Councillor Runcorn?
We have a conflict of interest in the monthly activities summary report, April 25 community facilities, strategic planning priorities, investigate options to increase the level of community youth projects. I want to be very transparent about Kopai Reach. It predates my time as a councillor. I was past chair of the local homeless school association, community member of the homeless school for 14 years, member of the Makariri Headwaters catchment group. And next, my involvement plus my councillor involvement, I'd like to discuss it. There's an immediate health and safety issue up at the Reach, and I'd like to discuss the promotion and the annual funding at that time, please.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other further conflicts? We don't have any extraordinary urgent items today. So we've got our minutes from the last meeting on the 28th of May, page 6 of the agenda. Someone happy to move those? Directly, Councillor Buckerai, seconded by Councillor Keys. No discussion on those. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? That is carried. Now we have public participation today, and we've got Johan Brothers up here to address the meeting. Welcome along, Johan.
We were last in, yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to sit at the end of the table if you want?
Thank you for the opportunity. So I'll tear into it, not waste too much time. So Johan, along with my wife Joyce, we own and operate Wairua Heritage. We're both trustees on the Tuatapere upwards track. Myself was about 20 years. So we started the depot in the mid-90s, so we've been involved in the tourist industry in Southland for more than 20 years. In our corner, along with the hump track, we showcase jewellery of Southland and people all over the world, as well as New Zealand. So we believe there's an immense potential for responsible tourism operators. It's a fact that around the world wealthy people are poor, and we have an obligation to take as much as that money as we possibly can for ourselves. so what we contribute, what we do contributes far more to our community than just the financial aspect. Because we bring people to showcase them and see this area. One of the saddest things about living in Southland is that a high percentage of our best and brightest offspring will leave to pursue careers elsewhere. Tourism has the potential to provide viable, vibrant, small and medium-sized businesses. And through Great South, no doubt the Southland District Council wishes to help facilitate these sorts of things. A couple of points I'd like to raise with the council is a fund of Great South, of which tourism promotion is a. So there's not a criticism of any particular people at all. In fact, they've almost been all lovely, gorgeous. In fact, it's smart and have a genuine desire to help. But as far as helping our business, all these years, it's simply not much use, especially considering the cost that the known that's incurred. We've had some wonderful motivational meetings, but as a recipient of this wonderful support, perhaps I should stay quiet, but as a funder, the ratepayer needs to get value for money. It's my opinion that not at the moment, nor we sadly. So just with future direction, please look at this stuff. Just as a side, as a responsible operator, along with 11 other operators, we completed another Great South Run sustainable tourism course last year, focusing mainly on carbon reduction and efficiencies and how we can purchase carbon credits. For 6 days of our lives, we'll never get back. Southland ratepayers shouldn't be funding this sort of rubbish. So, another thing, for various reasons, after many years being with Colmark, endorsed, we're no longer willing to pay their fees. As a result, Tourism New Zealand, in some aspects of Great South, are no longer able to promote us yet. We appreciate the ideal of industry standards, which is a good thing, but there's another almost dysfunctional government organisation. It's a bit negative, but on another note, with council amalgamations, I think it needs to happen. It's going to be efficient, otherwise it'll be lost. This is your guys' opportunity, especially with the present government. And it doesn't need to be dragged down by bureaucratic rubbish, which we've all seen so much. It's time to forge forward. So it's your time to lead. It really, really is. You've got an awful lot to do. Maybe if it can function efficiently, it could take over the administration of Southland Field and conservation lands. Best of luck. We are on the same side. But I can't leave here without mention of Southland's best kept dirty secret, the Wire River. We're going to continue to cooperate there, but I'm too embarrassed to. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. I'll open up the floor for questions if you like, so you can just stay there. So just one from me first. What kind of support would you like from Great South as a tourism operator? What are you looking for?
Well, their aims are the same. Their aims will be the same, but it gets lost. So you will deal with this stuff all the time. So I hope you can understand that. We have lots of lovely functions, and so on. I know it surrounds us. With the time on the hump track, we can see what adopting it with money too is like we wouldn't believe. But we have to find a way through to make this a better province to live in. And it's a time of change, and you guys are going to have to lead it, I think.
Thank you. Councillor Blackrock.
Thank you. You said those are 6 days of your life that you want to get back. What did you, because you say you went and you were all about sustainability and carbon reduction. What were you expecting in those 6 days?
We want to be a good operator. We want to be clean, green, and we want the world to look at us as being really shiny. We've made a lot of rubbish.
Can you go into detail what you mean by rubbish?
We talked about micro hydroelectric plants, the hydrogen engines, electric engines for a jet boat. Why would they even talk about that? For a jet boat, I don't like paying fuel. It's steering it was rubbish. It took. There were 11 of us operators, so the last day we were all given $200 worth of carbon credits, which go to ECOS, I think.
Yeah.
No one paid them up.
So
You don't want them.
in 30 years of your printing, have tourists come to you and asked you for, say, what is your carbon profile like? Your carbon footprint, have you ever been questioned by a tourist on that?
Never, no.
Thank you.
Or Cormac. And obviously done very well about my work.
Thank you.
Councillor Chamberlain?
Thanks, Joey. Would Great South be better off spending the money on promoting this area rather than ferry workshops? Is that what you're saying?
I know, yeah, the intent is good. And some things that do right, but yeah, the money goes at the top. And we don't see the benefit, and I should just give the money to me.
Yep.
Do they promote this area?
It's generic, so you'll never know.
Yeah.
Sadly, we have not. We've got some international wholesalers and really good. We've found them by accident. We've had our own productions, which is sad. People going to trends and all over the place. And next week I will be working with Ross from Bench Tours, Rob Great South. And hopefully we can get some good value out of it. So,
Councillor Fraser?
I'm curious about that comment. I should just give the money to you. What would you do with it?
I'll spend it wisely. Promotion of their business.
Yeah.
And the fact is, the fact that they again, we may have to seek advice with we would buy. Yeah.
I'll take a final question from Councillor Wilson and then we'll.
You mentioned kind of facetiously that taking over control of Southland conservation areas. Do you have any issues with your business as far as kind of concessions with dock or any issues in the future of what you're working?
You know the answer, don't you?
I'm
curious. Absolutely useless. It's dysfunctional. Field National Park is management plan in 2007. It expired in 2017. We're all constrained by it. It's slightly tribal. They can hold it, keep us at bay. I think we've had 8 concession managers in the last 3 years. And I don't know who they are now. I don't think we can find it anymore. Certainly not in South. It's dreadful. We all know that, but biodiversity, we work with a lot of dog people, and biodiversity is great. It's I don't know why they're staying there. That function is the understanding work that passionate about the administration. It's a bureaucracy going badly wrong.
So you believe that could be more into the future of Southland government bringing conservation area
if you were good at that.
Cool. And Councillor O'Brien's just looked at me.
Through your worship. Thanks, Johan. 2 questions. How long have you been operating?
Since 96.
It's 1996. And I'm well aware of your operation, and I'm well aware of other people outside of Southland who are well aware of your operation by coming and doing your convention. You'll be aware that the New Zealand Tourism Board has just gone through with branding. They've just spent $13 million on a rebranding campaign, and that rebrand will be released tomorrow.
Sure.
Now that campaign purely focused on looking at areas outside of our tourism hotspots, focusing on out of season, the more provincial areas and so on and so forth, from Cape Reinga. and that included some Southland operators. Were you approached by Tourism New Zealand at any stage throughout the process?
Still not called.
Because you're not Hallmark,
Yeah.
that would be the reason why. Okay.
We're doing that, Peggy, because varying degrees of competency. Also, DOC no longer recognised them as a, with a short guided walks concession that tidies that one up.
Yes.
I like the idea of Hallmark. I was talking about it, but it's not working. It's $1,000. Doing the hunt track Hallmark again. No one's forward. My understanding is that couldn't get round those two people who would do a target Southland. Apparently they're quite good now. We've had some really useless ones. Just saying.
Cool. Well, I might just wrap that up. No, but thank you very much for coming along and speaking. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I just want to, it was a bit remiss of me at the start, just acknowledge the members of the community board that are here as well. So we've got Wayne, Paula, Blaine, and have I missed anyone there? I don't think so. And of course the chair. So just thank you for hosting us here today. So the first report on our agenda is the local water well consultation. It's item 7.1 on page 21. And I believe Fran is going to come and speak to this one. Fran and Matt.
You will, and I've got one spare, but just to start with, just to let you know, there were 7 additional submissions that came in late, which I have circulated out. So if there's the next one is going to work with and just to thank you very much for the time on this. So it's been a long process, and as with your year, the mayor has gone out and scoped work at least 10 different meetings throughout the region, or the area, our Southland area, including 2 at Hotel House. So each of the community board areas you had an opportunity to have consultation. You'll see in the document on page 5 the approximate attendees at each of those locations. And what I can let you know is now with the additional 7 late submissions, the total of the number of submissions is now exactly 200 submissions. These 7 additional ones were all for the adjusted status quo, so that takes the percentage to 97.5% in support of the adjusted status quo, 2.5% of submitters for the CCO option. So in terms of submissions, just well, obviously the reason why we're here today is to take the community consultation and understand that even after that community person here before we make a final decision around which preferred option we would like. So we had a preferred option, but which is now the one you want us to take forward and put into the plan. We need to have that plan written by the 3rd of September, so it is quite crucial that we do make a decision here today. I think the community has to be reasonably clear. In terms of the themes that the community was provided, local control and accountability was probably one of the key ones that came out. That was focusing around the importance of the retaining local decision making and having that accountability at this table. Affordability and cost efficiency was the next most significant aspect. The 750,000 taken to set up the CCO plus the 625,000 ongoing costs was seen as additional and not necessarily that financial impact not necessarily being worth it, given that the feel that what was already happening around the table was appropriate. So there's also conversations around reform fatigue, which have come out, and distrust of the structural change. particularly following that, the three water reform process that got abandoned through the process, as you're aware of. The confidence in council's performance, like I say, that was reasonably high from a number of submitters, illustrating that they actually have trust in this governance group to be able to lead that, and for council to be able to perform its functions under the three waters aspects. And preference for simplicity as well was probably quite important. There's a couple of other less popular topics that got discussed, including equity and access. So raising concerns that the regional models would disproportionately favour larger cities if we went to that. That wasn't one of the ones that we obviously communicated on, but their preference, or a few submitters' preference would be that we didn't go to a joined up CCO with other region, within the region, or two regions or so on. Regulatory compliance was also discussed, as was the long-term resilience. So there's a few people that are starting to pick up on climate resilience, infrastructure investment, and environmental protection. One or a few people were definitely interested in support from government on an ongoing basis, not just through this first phase, but actually through the long term, to meet the new obligations around standards and requirements. So the other thing that I just want to bring to your attention is since we prepared the document, we have had so we have been working with internal Department of Internal Affairs and along with the standards, and we've just had a response from them in regards to where that's at, and we're about to have, I can circulate the documents to you from that regarding the submission. So the work that we were doing was essentially doing a case study, those should remember, a case study to show the new compliance and infrastructure standards on rural councils like Southland, facing the dual challenges of low connection numbers and a large number of dispersed wastewater treatment plants throughout our district. So what's that like for small rural communities? They picked on we worked with them on three wastewater treatment plants, small treatment plants, Edendale, Wyndham, Balfour, and Nightcaps. So those were the three that we've done as a study. That report's, like I said, I can email that out. It's literally just arrived yesterday afternoon. It's 101 pages, so I thought no point passing it to you overnight. You probably won't get a chance to read it. But I did want to just read out the letter that was attached to that. I think it's worthwhile just noting. So local water done well. So this has come from, sorry, just the name, Laurie Hand, Executive Director, Water Services Reform Program Policy and Tuatapere Branch. So of Internal Affairs. I would like to sincerely thank you and your team for the valuable contribution to the wastewater standards cost efficiency case study, small treatment plants report now finalised. Your openness in sharing data, operational insights and local experiences was instrumental in shaping a robust and realistic understanding of the opportunities and challenges councils face when managing small wastewater treatment plants. The perspective provided by Southland District Council were central to highlighting the practical implications of the proposed national wastewater environmental performance standards. We appreciate the time and effort your team dedicated to this report, often while managing tight timeframes and complex day-to-day responsibilities. Your input has directly contributed to a piece of work that we hope will support improved outcomes for small communities across the country. Attached is copy of the final reports. So just nice to have that acknowledgement. It was a big amount of effort that was put in by the team, and it's great to be acknowledged for that. Like I said, I'll distribute that. But in terms of the current report that we're looking at, I'd just like to indicate our recommendation is that the adjusted status quo is appropriate. So that's the staff recommendation.
Thank you, Brent. And yeah, I just want to acknowledge a couple of things. And firstly, the community that came out and attended those consultation evenings, it was really good engagement everywhere we went, even with the smaller numbers. But yeah, people were heavily engaged, and also acknowledging the team that came out as well. A lot of it was after hours, after working full days. I think they missed their tea some of the days, but the community, and I guess it highlighted the ownership that the community take in the assets, but also the ownership that the team take in the assets. And I think that was quite obvious to both sides that there's excuse me, a really good connection between the community council and our assets and important infrastructure as well. So it was I really enjoyed the experience, and I know that the staff did as well. And yeah, getting around the district was really important. And yeah, very clear direction from our community, I think, in here as well. And I think highlighting what you've just talked about too, that work that we've been doing with the DIA throughout this whole process, and hopefully that report contains some stuff that helps us out in terms of having an affordable solution going forwards. Are there any questions from the floor, Councillor Menzies?
Thank you. And yes, it's unfortunate, I guess, in some ways that report arrived yesterday, so you haven't had the opportunity to read it and feedback about how the constructive work that the team did with the DIA officials has resulted in actual change, which is what you're looking for, because as everyone's aware, we put this consultation document together without having all the information we felt we needed in order to make an informed decision. So with the advent of time since the document went out, has there been anything significant coming from the Minister or from DIA in respect of assisting us with this decision, and that is additional information to what is in the consultation document?
Yes, so just in terms of a very, very quick skim read last night, what I've garnered from that is 40 to 60% cost savings for design, and consenting is recommended or suggested would be the impact. But that's just for the design work. I haven't quite managed to get to the savings for the actual plants, but given the fact there's opportunities to still have at least some plants going to water, discharging to water, there would be some land associated purchase costs potentially in there. So, but I don't have the full picture at this moment. But they're suggesting between 40 to 60% saving on consenting, and yes, 40 to 60 consenting and
Yes, well, we were anticipating there will be, savings, for our plants and the standards that came out, and talked about some of that at the community meetings.
Correct.
So how might we, and you may have already planned for this, convey this to the public and our ratepayers who attended the meetings, but also those who didn't get a chance to do that? We might put it on the website, or?
Yes, that's a logical place for us to be able to put that report out, I think.
Yes, put the report and the ongoing updates.
Yes, yeah, thank you.
I think Cameron's got something else to
Thank you. So look, I got the report late last night. I think it's very helpful, and it's great the acknowledgement of our team and the willingness to work with DIA. My first read of it is that the purpose of the report was to establish whether standardisation and consistency would be helpful in reducing cost and compliance. And unsurprisingly, the report says that it would be. However, as Fran pointed out, for some of our schemes, the actual substantive issue isn't around necessarily whether we had a package design or there was a different pathway around getting a consent. Our issue is actually going to be around the disposal method. And from what I can see, the report isn't giving us specific advice for our plants. So at this stage, I would advise council that we still have a degree of uncertainty. While we have we can see a lower level of cost for the future around consistency on consenting and package design, we don't yet have a definitive number on what our future costs will be. So there is much more work to do. It's a great base to start from. obviously we'll share it. The DIA had made it public or given it to us without restraint yesterday. But I wouldn't like to assure council that we are crystal clear about our costs in year 10 or 12, just based on what the regulations will be. But there are other regulation changes which I'll talk about later, unrelated to this.
I thank you for that. I mean, to an extent, we're still working in the dark, but there's increasing light being shedded. What we know, yeah.
Yeah, playing the hand we've been out and playing it as well as we can. Councillor Chamberlain.
Oh, well, Cameron's probably answered that, but that was my question is, are our plants able to carry on status quo without too much need for major expenditure, but you can't really answer that at this stage.
Through I wouldn't like to give a definitive answer on the basis of the information we have at the moment.
Again, the irony of having to do this water service delivery plan by September and then finding out afterwards what we're going to be dealing with. So, Councillor Keys.
And the attachment, page 106, I see Becky Bell's presentation where she's saying she wishes to be heard in town.
Yes, I had a phone conversation. So outside of the actual consultation meetings, I had a couple of phone conversations with people as well that weren't able to attend, and so answered any questions. And Councillor Green.
Thank you, Worship. I just want to pass on my thanks to the team and to the Mayor for actually doing these trips out into our communities. I think it was a very valuable exercise. I know that there was, and the numbers are all here in terms of attendance, but in terms of the comms that went out, the meetings that were actually held, I think it just demonstrates that when we can get out into our communities and do that type of engagement, it actually reaps benefits for us.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. And I guess just also acknowledging the document itself, I got a lot of positive feedback from people that the document was really easy to follow and understand. It's not easy to get the messaging out of 60 years of reform into a couple of pages. And like I'd read through quite a lot of other councils' documents, some of them were sort of 40, 50 pages, and I think we did quite well in getting the right level out there and getting understandable too. So, yeah. Councillor
just sort of a query, because this has been a big change from the beginning of the training from free waters to local water front now. Now that a lot of the individual councils are determining what their future plans are, is there any indication from central government or DIA of once they see how the land lies, whether the sector can handle that new plan, whether the sector's fit to deliver if 67 kind of water entities continue versus the intention that maybe more will amalgamate through CCOs. It's a big difference from 5 entities or 4 entities or whatever it's going to be. But is there a risk that 10 months down the line, the sector looks at this and goes, we're still in the same issue where we don't have the resources throughout the entire national sector to deliver in this way, and it could all get thrown out again? Is there any discussion happening higher up of what if the outcome post September suggests that nothing's solved?
Yeah, it's a difficult question to answer, but I did ask a similar question to the Minister. I had a one-on-one with him and specifically asked around our proposed model because it's kind of not quite in line with what they were sort of mapping as the solution with the CCOs. And his answer was around, obviously, that financial sustainability piece that they've been talking about a lot. So, and also the local water done well part. So they'll support any model that is financially sustainable, but they were emphasising as well that local control and I guess the ability for local councils to make their own decision as long as it's financially sustainable going forwards. A lot of the CCOs and the likes are only going to become operational in 2027. So it's going to have quite a long tail in terms of how that actually goes going forward. It's a difficult one to answer when the government, being the masters of the reform, are confident that it is going to make a positive difference.
I guess the example would be if I guess September and go, well, Invercargill, you chose this, Southland, you chose this, but we're going to merge you two anyway, because that's how you're going to get financial. But they don't have the ability to then take.
Well, I got an assurance that that wouldn't happen as long as if it wasn't financially sustainable, then they'd put a facilitator / commissioner in to guide us into a financial.
That's really the bulk of it, is that financial stability.
Councillor Menzies?
Just a comment that we're aware of the change that's occurred through successive governments around the management of local water. And there's no guarantees that the parameters that we're looking at now will not change in a couple of years' time with the elections.
Thank you.
That's
Councillor?
really good question that sort of probably answered the question to a degree through Matt's question and your answer. But while the DIA have sort of indicated that we might get a saving between 40 to 60% in terms of consenting, and as you pointed out, even though you know, we don't have any specific advice around the disposal, over and above the regulation, we're still not really getting any real indication of what the real costs are around the long-term infrastructure are for Southland in terms of its water capability. Are we any closer to understanding how we're going to pay for that?
Well, we've got our long-term plan at the moment, which we know, and we've had signals that those standards are going to be easier and cheaper. So, I mean, we've got a marked line in the sand here, which, and Fran will correct me if I'm wrong, which is financially sustainable as it stands, even at that level. So anything that improves that, and again, I think the difference between financially sustainable and affordable are two different things. But in terms of ticking the box for the DIA, financially sustainable, status quo right now on the 2024-34 long-term plan, we're okay. So if those standards come in and that gets cheaper, we become more financially sustainable. So I think for Southland, we're in good shape. And I think irrespective of the model that we go down, the standards, the plants are all going to be the same. So those kind of challenges will be there no matter what. So it's the principle of what model we actually choose and how we kind of navigate through that.
I'd probably just put a few provisos on that. You know, there's sometimes inconsequential outcomes that you can't always see. So we, the submission, we did make it clear, and in our conversations make it clear the interactions between the standards and the RMA and how that lands, because sometimes something could be a fish hook that we've never anticipated. That could then derail what is anticipated in terms of the standards and the savings that might come through from those standards. So how they get actually implemented on the ground. We worked really hard with the consultant as well and made sure that we actually looked deeply at all of our plants, what we believe the standards were saying, how they were interacting with the RMA, and we fed back that information quite clearly at that stage through to the DIA going, hey, look, here's a hiccup and here's a hiccup that we see. So one of the in terms of the design and the savings there and consenting savings is really coming about by having a 35-year timeframe as well, because often we're getting consents that might only be 15 years or 20 years. And so having to run through that at least twice in the 35-year timeframe, it's a lot to do. And that process, or to redo that process, and a lot goes on consultants and others to relook at consenting. So, so there definitely, should be savings from that we see. Yeah. So there's a bit there though. No guarantees, but both we have been working with the DIA to put in our financial numbers, and we've been doing it for a while. So they've seen both sets of the numbers that we've looked at, but the potential could be efficient. And that they haven't realised when the final comes out.
And what was quite clear through the community conversations as well is people like the fact of having the ability to have the oversight and the say in the water infrastructure through council, and having that direct line. We're approachable, they can come and speak in public participation at a council meeting, or have direct engagement through community boards, and having that community aspect of it came across as quite important through as well.
Yeah, 97%.
Yeah. Councillor Chamberlain?
Yeah. I'd probably disagree that, you know, if you look at a 10-year plan, that's seeing us heavily in debt, and a lot of that is driven by the water reform. So
yeah,
I definitely think as a council that we need to be pushing and identifying all the savings we can, because
Yeah.
I disagree that in 10 years' time, you know, it's not affordable or sustainable to live.
Yes, no, I agree that you want to say something, but I totally agree with you. Yeah, I think, but in terms of meeting the requirements now and ticking the box of financially sustainable, it does, but yeah, that does not by no means mean it's affordable. But sorry, Cameron, did you want to?
thank you. Look, the LTP was done according to the prevailing rules and legislation, particularly around in effect, the environmental standards. We worked with you and chose a number that was probably anticipating that there would be change, but it wasn't anywhere near where it will end up. But we were unable to forecast what the government would do for obvious reasons. So that's why this conversation around what will the standards actually be, to come back to the question before about do we know what those costs are? We'll know what the costs are when we know what the standard is. At the moment, we don't know what the standard is because that's still being worked through.
Yeah.
We can see that consenting will be streamlined and for longer periods of time. We were already on package design, so we were probably going to see some of those benefits. The real drive behind all this is that the work needs to get done. And that's why so several questions have been around, will the sector have the capacity to absorb the work? It's actually not so much the structure about whether it's in CCOs or larger groups or small groups. It's actually the work that needs to get done that's going to drive it. We have been very clear from day one, we need to know what the standards are. As soon as we know those, we can then make very accurate forecasts. And we should see that in the next LTP. So anyway, that's the best I can do to explain the difference between what we were forecasting, which even at the time, you may recall I said to council, look, these numbers aren't going to happen. It's just not possible, particularly by year 10. And when you look at the difference, what we were projecting on the standards that we were required to budget on and where we thought they would go, we're talking around approximately 80 to 100 million across Southland in those 10 years of capital expenditure. That gives you a measure, if you like, about why we've been persisting and working with DIA and Tuatapere to see whether we can get specific answers for Southland.
And that LTP has actually served as a good tool, as a story to say this is where we're heading, and we don't want to head there, and this is why their standards need to be more relevant. So it's become quite a useful kind of guide on where we don't want to go by year 10. But if we look at it in the first 3 years of it, which is what we're working on now, it's more accurate and it gets. So yeah, I don't think that's a projection we want to try and follow. It's one that we need to navigate to get to a very different number. Okay, so there's no further questions. We've got quite a few recommendations there on page 23 that we're receiving the report. We're noting the decision is required to enable finalisation of the water services delivery plan for submission to DIA by 3rd of September 2025. We determined that this matter is significant under Council's significant engagement policy due to the long-term implications for infrastructure governance and community wellbeing. And we note that Council is making this decision in accordance with the Local Government Water Services Preliminary Arrangements Act 24 and confirms that it has sufficient information to do so. And that's quite an important one because we couldn't actually follow the standard consultation process with this, and the law actually got changed. So, but I know I made it very clear to the DIA at the time that we were going to follow a decent consultation process, and I think we did do that justice. That we're confirming that the consultation and decision-making requirements set out in section 61 to 64 of the Local Government Water Services Preliminary Arrangements Act 24 being the alternative requirements to those in the Local Government Act and other relevant provisions of the Local Government Act, except where modified by those alternative requirements, have been complied with to the extent necessary, and that sufficient information is available to make a decision without further analysis of options or impacts. And we note that extensive public consultation process occurred under the alternative consultation and decision-making process, and that was undertaken during April to May, including public meetings, digital engagement and written submissions, and the overwhelming community support for the adjusted status quo option. And we're adopting the adjusted status quo, which is an in-house business unit as Southland District Council's preferred water services delivery model to be included in our water services delivery plan. And we note this decision does not preclude future considerations of other delivery models, kind of to Matt's point, should legislative changes or regional opportunities arise. And we authorise the Chief Executive to finalise the draft water service delivery plan for the formal adoption by Council no later than the 30th of August and to submit the plan to the Secretary for the local government by 3rd of September 2025. Someone in a position to move A through to H? Councillor Graney, seconded by Councillor Keast. Is there any further discussion on that at all? There being none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Anybody against? That is carried. Thank you. And thank you again, Fran, and thank you to your team. Okay, so our next item is item 7.2, the management report, and this is on page 33 of the agenda, and I'll look to my left.
Thank you. Great pleasure in presenting the management report for June. For the A3s, of course, that takes us up to the end of April. So the purpose of the report is just to show council the things that have been happening and the where we are through on the work program and the various activities. Those of you that have studied it closely, and I know you have, will have spotted that in the interest of efficiency and not wasting paper, we accidentally left the resolution out. But it's a resolution to receive the report for information. So it's an information only report. Just want to touch on the things that have been happening coming from Wellington. We were talking before about the freshwater changes, and just over the last week or 2 weeks, there have been a stream of announcements from government about changes that they are proposing to some of the pieces of legislation that we work under or we deliver on behalf of the government. So a number of the first ones are around changes to the RMA. Council may be aware that the government has got a large RMA replacement program underway. They're going to replace it with 2 bills. They want to do that before the end of this term, but they've also signalled a number of more immediate changes which will come in first. So they've announced consultation on freshwater management, making it easier to consent quarries and mines, sweeping overhaul of primary sector regulations, and enabling more housing. So the ones that probably affect us more directly as a territorial authority are those around housing and enabling granny flats and papakainga housing for, in effect, housing for around marae. We've got an internal team having a look to see what the impacts of those will be. Most of them, I think, are probably going to affect the regional council more than us, just in the short term, but we are still having a look to see what the implications are. I don't know what the implications are, but some of the changes that we have seen announced on other matters have looked like they will be substantive, but then underlying it will still be a standard or some other thread of legislation, which means that it looks like the change can happen, but it can't actually happen. So because of the RMA and the guidelines and the standards are also complicated now after so many years, it's by no means certain that the things that are being announced at this stage will automatically happen. But one of the ones I saw, for example, is that it would enable farmers to graze nearer to or on wetlands. For example, there's bound to be some feedback in the consultation process around those. The freshwater management, the intent to rebalance Te Mana o Te Wai and to make sure that people better understand what the implications of that are, will probably help clarity, certainly help us, and we're going about our business as a provider of water and waste treatment systems. But it's very early days. It was only announced the other day. Another one that is actually fairly important was the announcement around changes to the health and safety Act. And the idea to rebalance work safety activities so that they are more inclined to help provide advice. And while they still will maintain a strong prosecution and enforcement actions, the perception certainly that the government is trying to address is that WorkSafe was reluctant to provide any kind of useful guidance, but was always there ready to prosecute. Now, I don't know that that's entirely fair to WorkSafe, but certainly that's a perception that has been developing. So the sort of changes that are being proposed to basically provide more guidance and to perhaps shift the balance between the employer being responsible for most of the safety issues to the employee also being more responsible or held more accountable. They also announced a road cone hotline, which has been now active for a week. While it's headline grabbing, it did have a purpose to try and make sure that when people see road cones, they perceive that there is a risk and they drive accordingly, rather than they were so overexposed to it that we no longer think that there could be a hazard. As one of, we operate the second largest roading network in the country. We've had a working group and to try and implement the new standards now for some time, and the team involved in that will tell you that it's reasonably difficult to interpret at the moment exactly what WorkSafe are recommending. Just the final thing is that if you are a motorist and you come across a work site and there are a large number of cones and it slows down your trip, you can certainly, I personally have I feel that my progress might be being impeded. But anyone who's had a puncture on the side of a rural road and has been trying to change that while a car went past at 100 k's will have an insight about what it's like for our road workers who are actually out there. And the only protection they're actually getting is the fact that the road cones are trying to direct the traffic away from them. So it is a complex issue, but it's not unwelcome, I think, to see some clarification around the balance on the WorkSafe legislation. What we don't know, and we will probably do some work and submit on, is what does that mean for contractors? And as you know, that we are working hard to try and improve the ability for small contractors in Southland to do the work that council funds. The announcement that two ministers made around the findings from the Milford Opportunities Project, I suspect there's a bit more to come on that, but in simple terms, they said the airport in Milford will stay open, cruise ships can still come in, and it's time to reinvest in the corridor into Milford. So there were quite a lot of parks and maybe attractions that had been closed after floods, or there was overdue work that's now going to get done. So the government's drive to increase tourism will give us a bit of a headache in Milford because it's got some complications, as you're aware. But it's good to see the decisions being made so that things can proceed. So one recommendation that MOP had made, which was to have a new regulatory body to administer the whole of the area, that has not proceeded. So, and it was very good to see money coming out of the Resilience Fund to carry on that work around the hazard risk picture for Milford. And they also announced money to carry on the work on AF8, which is that study on the implications of the Alpine Pole break. Final one is the DIA are proceeding with issuing council by council metrics, which will enable councils to be compared. I do note that it's not directly, comparing one council to another isn't actually straightforward. but it probably won't be unhelpful in that it potentially opens a wider conversation for explaining the role that council has, and particularly sometimes the extra work that government asks councils to perform on their behalf. Happy to answer any questions and to throw it open then to the rest of several ELT members here who are dying to assist with any questions on the A3s. And yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Come on, Councillor Menzies.
Just in relation to the RMA changes that are proposed, more about the early ones than the longer term ones. Is there an opportunity, and this may be already planned, for staff working on what those changes mean for our area to work alongside Environment Southland in a joint response or an understanding of each other's responses to be fed back on that area? Noting an interest will need to be expressed by Environment Southland to do that.
We'd certainly be open to that. I can say through you. I think our challenge at the moment is that we have yet to see what the documents actually look like and where the overlap might be. But yeah, it will, because of Southland's rural nature, it will have a significant effect. Highly productive land, I think, was one of them, and something else. Oh, and sorry, there was one other one I forgot to tell you about, which is I only spotted that this morning. Legislation introduced to restrict farm to forest conversions was announced yesterday. Massive. They will all be significant for South.
Yes.
So it would be ideal to have a joint working group. I don't know whether we'll have time. We're happy to have a look.
Yeah, I think it's understanding the principle, and so again, our ratepayers are aware of that intention. Thank you.
Councillor O'Brien and Councillor Chamberlain.
Thank you, through your worship. I mean, you probably read my mind a little bit, Cameron, because my question is around RMA reform as well and around the HPL. Has the government given any indication on changes around highly productive land and the desire for better housing in rural communities, in particular in Southland, based on some of the challenges that we have in the future for housing?
What answer some of that?
That'd be great.
From the housing point of view, the conversations that I've been having on that sort of national scale, the government at the moment is very focused on that housing for growth, and particularly in the areas of Tauranga, Queenstown, those sort of bigger areas, tier 3 councils. Tier 1 and 2 councils. We're a tier 3 council. So probably not too much focus on an area like Southland. So that also, I think, open for housing that enables growth and supports that, but I think more of a focus on those sort of bigger metropolitan growing areas. Did you have any answers that you want to add to the other part of the question?
I'm not aware that the government is specifically thinking around Southland. Some of the other groups that are specifically thinking about the implications of this on rural land are federated farmers, and I'm reasonably confident that federated farmers are back to Wellington to say, hey, these things are having an effect on the ability to subdivide and do housing in rural land in a way that possibly the pressure on housing and growth is more coming from the larger urban centres rather than us. But actually other lobby groups are saying, or interest groups are saying, hey, this is still having an effect on farm succession planning and all the rest of that.
So based on that sort of overarching principle in terms of a legislative change, have the government given any indication that they are receptive to those changes?
At this stage I can't. So our team will be having a look at what are the implications of each of the things that have actually been implemented or are to be implemented, but at this stage I couldn't give you that.
And Grey South are also doing a lot of work around that housing space at the moment. Like tomorrow they're running a Southland housing kind of forum, so there is proactive work being done in that space through the likes of Grey South.
Thank you.
Councillor Chandler?
Thanks, Rob. Can we get access? I'd be interested in reading the farm forestry one and the mop one. Maybe forward, or can we get access?
Absolutely. They just came off the government website. But yeah, no problem at all.
Councillor Granny?
Thank you, Your Worship. I attended the MOT presentation last week. I just think it's worth highlighting that the outcomes that the government have decided on still don't really spread the tourism load. They were very, what's the word I want to use? They were still of the opinion that park and ride wasn't the solution, so that's not on the table, and that they were going to be focusing on coach, cruise, coach still. So, and there was no mention of Tiana in that presentation either, which, if you want to draw some conclusions from that, still makes it feel very Queenstown focused, and it still doesn't actually focus on looking at Fiordland in the bigger picture as being able to be a hub for additional accommodation. So out of that $15 million that was announced, it was very much focused on the corridor itself, and wasn't actually necessarily looking at the bigger picture of, if we have more international tourists, where are they actually going to stay? So I did feel that Tiana had been missed out of that presentation, particularly.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. And I think I used an opportunity the other day in a newspaper interview to actually highlight the fact of Tiana actually being a hub, and Milford isn't a suburb of Queenstown. It's a part of an experience that you can have in Fiordland, and Tiana actually provides a lot more of an experience for people if they do stay for a couple of days and can go and do a whole lot more. So I think, yeah, we've got a role there as a council to continually push that. So Sarah, did you want to?
Yeah, and just adding on to that, I think in the bigger picture of things, when you look at some of the comments that have been already made around tourism today, around the table, I think that, it's still on us to make sure that the work that is being done to promote, or that work is being done to promote Fiordland overseas, because it's very easy to, and there's been additional funding announced to market to Australia, the States and China. 38 million over the next handful of years was announced this week as well. So we need to be very mindful that that marketing piece still needs to look at spreading the load into the regions, not just focusing on some of those major centres as well.
Well, actually, can I just, through to Your Worship, following on from what you just said, Sarah, and as you said, like today, we've already heard examples of that. So while the messaging is sort of coming through to one degree that we need to do one thing, the actions are not necessarily reflecting that with regards to, if you're looking at specific operators in Southland. Speaking from experience as a hallmark person and having an interesting relationship with hallmark over the last 10 years, I can, what someone had said earlier resonates. There's a lot of inconsistency with the messaging over a long period of time relative to the funding and relative to where the overall level of funding is then targeted in terms of a campaign. And coming back to ordinary everyday Southlanders just trying to run their tourism businesses.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, when you look at how Southland tourism, including Fiordland, operates, and not everybody can afford to be Cormark accredited. Therefore, not everybody can afford to get that representation through trends and areas like that. Therefore, that means when you look at an area that has multiple smaller businesses that all are interconnected, the restaurants rely on the accommodation, which rely on the which rely on the activities, and the interconnection between those is actually way more powerful than having a quad accreditation in so many ways for us here on the ground. But when you actually look at the representation that we get when contingents of people are going overseas and doing these trips overseas, then it becomes quite a different ballgame. And it would be really nice to think that we could attract a greater level of even private investment into some of our areas to actually help support growth.
And I think
it will be there.
Yeah. And I think part of it, we should probably move on from tourism as well, but I think part of it as well is recognising, the government's just announced yesterday they're using the visitor levy to fund marketing, but also from a council point of view, especially in areas like Tuatapere, where you've got a great walk and more tourists coming in, the need to support those tourists with infrastructure, even basic things like toilets, and where that funding comes from, and it shouldn't necessarily be coming from a very small community. It should be coming from the user pays tourism, and that's what that levy is supposed to be for. And we need to make sure that we're capturing a lot of that to help support the tourism growth that's coming through. And yeah, I think we're in a town at the moment that's on the cusp of a whole lot of growth, and it's a prime example of what's needed. I am conscious that we've got a few A3s and we've got a few GMs in the room as well. Did anyone have any particular questions around any of those? They're very good documents as always.
I'd like to speak to the community facilities.
Yeah.
Now?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks so much. Just for clarity, we've got a Kopai Reach. I'm speaking about Kopai Reach, and it's one of the 8 district reserves.
Sorry, Councillor, you mentioned at the start you've got a conflict of interest in it. So what do you have questions for the team, or what?
We have a health and safety issue up here, and I've got a question around the memorandum of understanding.
Because there is
Limehouse Permanent School Association, they wanted to apply for funding to the New Zealand Brown Cover, which our Rotary got for the group as well. I would like a couple of minutes just to speak to this one.
Because there's a report coming to council shortly on.
There's no time frame around it, and we've got an issue up there that needs to be dealt with now. Is there any possibility I could spend 3 minutes just talking through this, please?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. So Kopai Reach, this is a report on the high value area of Kopai Reach produced in 2016, and also Southland District Council Environment, Southland, and New Zealand Land Trust. Give you a little bit of an overview. The site has ecological significance of district and regional scales for a number of reasons. A district forest type of ecosystem, riparian Kopai forest occupied a special niche immediately opposite lowlands. There were some farmers way back in the 30s put their hands up to stop them being the stream of the winter stream being the Kopai's being removed. It is currently a Q2 covenant over all the ridge, and as part of that this high value report, the site provides a fantastic opportunity for the restoration of a distinctive ecosystem that has all but disappeared from the landscape. The existing restoration plantings at the southern end have flourished and now set a benchmark for what could be achieved along Kopai Reach. The QE2 open space covenant over the area was established in the 1980s, and in the early 2000s, Limehouse School, in conjunction with the Department of Conservation and the Southland District Council, established the picnic area and restoration plantings at the southern end. These have flourished and set a benchmark for what could be achieved elsewhere along Kopai Reach. Limehouse School involvement has been 30 years, and they've been community heroes around Kopai Reach, along with a number of members of the community. There's a wee picture of the original planting that mentioned Southland District Council. We have been trying, my involvement in the reach goes back to Bridget Elliott in September 2021 in McKinnon, and the pathway forward was always to put this into a memorandum of understanding, which we're having discussions about. I dealt with a number of staff who have been absolutely amazing, and including Cameron, who have released some bridge beams, etc., for the new outside classroom. We're missing out on funding opportunities. We haven't got any dates, for the MOU to come through. So the community itself has, got together, and Richard Kite, who's the ex-board chair of Limehall School and was chair of Thriving Southland, clear officer, immediate past president of Limehall's Home and School Association, Thriving Southland, Deputy Catchment Group, Kathy Turnbull, the teacher, the Home and School, and Maggie, Makarua Headwaters Catchment Group, Southland District Councillor, Chair, Home and School, and member. We've drafted a MOU which we'd like to present to council, and I'd like to put a motion on the table today to clarify the funding that came through the LTP discussions from Jared Kepi in relation to the community activated funds that he put up for that beautiful opening that you were at, Rob, and spoke to.
I think in terms of that, like you've requested a report to come to council, which will be coming sometime in July.
You requested a report.
There's a report coming in July for that, and I think that's the appropriate time and place to have that kind of discussion where we've actually got some background to make a decision around that kind of stuff. So I think we need to wait for that report to come through.
I've spoken to Sam about this as well. I have the background, I've got all the information, I've got so much of this, and we're just talking about ease of doing business. I think, you know, we're already at a point where this MOU, you know, this would be really helpful for staff under a lot of pressure.
I think just again, it needs to come through in a report to a council to make a decision. Sam, did you want to speak? Did you?
Yes, certainly. So just to confirm, the community facilities manager will start and discuss this report that we will prepare. And it will be, I believe the date's the 27th or thereabouts in July.
Yeah.
We'll have a report back to you with more comprehensive information for your decision making.
Cool. Thank you, Sam.
Awesome. You said about the
Councillor Fraser.
What's the report going to contain, just to get some clarity?
Are you able to answer that one?
What will we be deciding on?
We'll be providing the council with an update on progress so far, what the budget situate, what the expenditure has been currently on the route, and what's programmed in the long-term plan for the future potential expenditure, and the position on the MOU and the Limehall School.
Councillor Menzies.
Thank you. I'll be helpful to have that information coming in a report so we can fully consider what council has put forward. But I am concerned that you've talked about a health and safety issue. I think that's what we need to be discussing today, because if there's a health and safety issue, we can't afford to leave that.
So is there a health and safety issue? Which is what?
On the walking track, as you're coming on the edge by the just by the river there, the little track that the school created with Southland District Council, the edge is now dropping and down, and so Jesse Blythole and the children have redesigned that track.
So is that on SDC land?
Yes, it is on SDC land, Rob.
So has an RFS been put through for that?
I've just identified it myself,
So that would need to go through an RFS to get it into the system, and I'm just looking at Mark who's nodding. So so if we can get that through.
I've got to bring it up today.
Yeah, so the appropriate channel will be through an RFS, which I mean that's effectively what's just happened. But Mark's taking notes there, so we can look at.
So would it be helpful for some information on this, because I know they've reached inside out. Done a draft on the very similar MOUs that we've got for the Wellington Walking Track and another group that I was put on. Would it be easy management for me to send that through to you? Information for miles and by reach on a keeping by date.
Certainly happy to receive that information. We've got to weigh it up in terms of the information that we hold internally in the organisation, but we're happy to receive if you'd like to forward through what we prepare that report.
For us, it's about enhancing the partnership with Southland District Council.
Cool, and we'll just we'll move on now. Any other questions with the Councillor Duncan?
I just see in the transport report, it says about the resealing program being finished by the 31st of March. We managed to get that achieved, do we know?
Yes, we have.
Cool.
Excellent. Good.
I'm just confused with what's gone on. Like, you're waiting on an MOU or something. Well, you had an MOU and you wanted to go to council, but we had to wait for council to create their own MOU.
Been ongoing since
On a community led.
2019.
And
Yeah.
so, are you going to do what's your question?
I've got another question coming up. It's So
Yeah, councillor McElroy.
Yes, thank you. I have a question on the Lagoma. This has been, so on page 34, it says the staff have been responding to Lagoma requests, a high volume in recent months and progressing the draft. Now, I could be on the wrong page, but the last that I see, the Lagoma requests open to public are from August of last year. So if we've had an influx of these in recent months, when do we release them out? So it's been nearly 9 or 10 months, I would say, since the website's been updated.
Is that the very question?
To your worship, sorry, I'm gonna try and paraphrase the question. The government we have been receiving forever, there's legislation there, we started reporting, we changed the process, started documenting in a more structured way. So the first report comes through from September, we started that on 1st of September. Last year, we saw the first Lagoma report come through from 1 September to 21 February, I want to say, was the last reporting period. And this reporting period is 24th of February to the 30th of May. And if your other question was, are we putting the Lagoma that we receive out in the public domain? Our current status is no, we don't. We only do it when we think it is of public interest. What we had said when we changed the process was we actually need to have a policy that says when we release, what are the reasons behind it, etc., etc. The team are just working on that, and I think we had said last year to council that within a year of this new thing, new system, we will establish all of those things and make sure that we are. So that's our kind of.
Thank you. If I just have a question, how are we going to decide whether something's in public interest? I just worry about the transparency piece and that if we have said if the public have requested something should be not there.
So through you, worship, well, that's exactly what the policy is trying to identify at a very broad level. I can say that what we'll do is everything will be released unless there are privacy matters. So I'll give you an example. Somebody might put in a Lagoma request, which is about, can you tell me all of the complaints that have been received on my property over the last year, whatever, a year. We'd probably not release that request out in the public domain. We release it back to the person who asked for it, or we might do redaction or whatever else there might be. So, but we need to be really clear about what's going up and what we're holding back. So that's what we're going to do through policy. So we've got time.
Thank you. My own concern stems from the fact that we haven't got anything on the website from last August. So is there something at all? Are there some that we could release, perhaps while we're waiting a decision on some of the more sensitive ones? But it just seems like if you look at that page, that it's not being populated and the council is not looking at that site.
Yeah, to your worship, I am hesitant to do that because we do need to be clear about what we're releasing on what grounds, because we can be challenged about why we have released some and not the others. I have had experience with that before, that we don't have really clear guidelines and rules, even staff have, gray areas about what we're doing or not. It just puts us in a good position. We don't intend to hold that back for a very long time. I'm not thinking that we do it, will take 6 months or whatever. We do intend to do it fairly quickly, so it'll probably be a matter of a couple of months that we should, at most, that we should have that all up and ready to go.
Sure. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for speaking.
Through you, your worship, just following on from your conversation, before we crack on. So to be specific, unless it's like legally privileged or commercially sensitive information, why are we in a situation where we're still going through a process of trying to work that out under the deployment? Like, is this something that has been ongoing with us, or is this?
Sorry, to your worship, so
if we're still are we trying to figure out what is appropriate to release as a liquid request? Unless it's
No, it's just getting a policy in place to actually give the team guidance on how to do the process. So I guess it's an iteration on what, because council previously hasn't had a policy in that space, and the proviso being more transparent, actually putting that in there so we can release the stuff, but then also having the framework on what to do, so it's not left up to an individual staff member to try and make a decision on. Is that a?
Yeah.
I might have misunderstood Councillor Booker's question. We have very clear guidelines around the government requests that come into us. We know what we are withholding, on what grounds we are withholding, what we are releasing. The question was more geared, as I understood it, about when do we put it out in the public domain in general. So, you know, you might have requested something, we've responded, we've given you that, but when do we release it out to all in summary? And for that, I'm saying we need a policy that says, which by default will be we release everything. And I speak without actually having worked through the policy, but the general idea is we release everything except for those things that have some grounds that we don't want to release it to the public.
Yeah, I understand.
And just looking at, sorry.
Yeah.
Just looking at our time schedule today, because we've got set timeframes that we need to meet, and this is an information report. Are there any sort of pertinent questions around what we've got on here now that can't be addressed later on? Well, I've got the team in the room. Councillor Wilson.
I guess I'm sort of trying to join some dots together, but around the community facilities, and we've got that reserve management plan review that has been discussed. That's now in a priorities and work. So just ensuring that whatever Margie's raising with Ko-Fi Reach is at least being prioritised ahead of that, because I've heard a lot about this throughout the training, but evidently it's not a priorities thing.
No, like I said, I mean, I've got an email correspondence here from the 30th of May where there was a request to discuss it at council. So I then sent a request to the chief executive to actually bring the report, which Sam's talked about. So the wheels are in motion.
Because the other one that I haven't followed up is in the waters, a project that I've been trying to work hard on, and it's a project that the community is trying to be involved in. It's Lumsden stormwater. So no maintenance done for a long time, major issues. The community had to write a report to say, here's your issues. It got addressed. A year later, the community is still waiting to hear what is the capital works plan going to be. Come talk to us. We have local knowledge. We know what happens when it rains. And there's just been no engagement back to the community at all. And dialogue this week saying that that project's going ahead, but it's got complications with the design. Well, no one's come to talk to the community, and there's similarities with Ko-Fi Reach. We're talking about catchment management. We're talking about opportunities with the community can, through MOU, take some responsibility out of things. But I'm not seeing any direction in this, and I want to see better relationships with the catchment groups and better relationships with those community groups, trying to get on with pretty important shit that's going to also flow into our local waters, done well planning, how to separate stormwater kind of out of council's very expensive problems. But I mean, I'm feeling that frustration at the stormwater infrastructure thing in Lumsden and down the road in Ko-Fi Reach, sitting around waiting on community potentially just getting catchment management stuff that is going to help you in the same field.
Yeah. Just with respect, I mean, I have been privy to a number of conversations with you and the Three Water staff around that project in Lumsden. So the communications are happening, and I don't know if Fran's got an update. It's probably hard without Grant here to actually.
No, but what I can say is definitely has been some progress. What we probably haven't done is communicate that very well back and take that next step. So it is in that design, trying to catch that design. I've got some really potential good solutions there as well to add to the information that's been provided to date. So we need to get back to you, and yeah, apologies, we've had some other more things that we were struggling with.
The last clarification on that, on the management report was, is that contract design the ongoing stormwater contract design, or is that the capital works? So that's the design of the actual capital works project, because that's the one that dates back to like 2015. So the community's waited 10 years already on knowing what's happening with that.
Yeah, well, we'll come back and we'll connect, and I get the point that the connection to the catchment group needs to occur. So like I said, we've been looking at land holdings as well that are available for helping with that process. So we'll come back and we can.
That's right. Cool. So I am going to move the meeting along now. So we've got the recommendation there that we received the management report. So I'll move that from the chair to the seconder, Councillor Duffy. All those in favour, please say aye. Anyone against? That is carried. So the next report is the mayor report, which is on page 49 of your agenda, which I will take as read. And in the interest of moving this along as well, I'll just give a couple of updates around kind of some things that are in the pipeline, particularly around Rakiura with the electricity project out there. So hopefully get some certainty soon around the funding of that and moving that project forwards. But that's been an exciting one that we've been working on. The spatial planning piece is going really well. As the Regional Heritage Working Group. But yeah, is there anything any of the councillors have been involved in that they want to do a particular update in this report? Councillor Keast?
Just to let you know, Citizens of the Arts Bureau is going to support community retreat, which covers off a lot of seeds and recording work, which is really exciting. But yeah, the resource there to enable people to be connected. Cool. Put a lot of work into it. They did get some funding, but there was a lot of volunteering this weekend as well. Opportunity, just want everyone to know that it's there.
Cool, thank you. Any other, Councillor Graham?
Thank you, Worship. Just in terms of Connected Marahiku, they aren't operating really under a formal structure now. So the structure has become more informal and currently looking at ways of continuing being able to fund that. So looking for an umbrella entity that will take the Connected Marahiku piece and move that, keep moving that forwards. So it's much more an informal arrangement now. And ICC are looking to divest the I guess being the employer and providing that in-kind support as well. So it's just changing.
Southland Regional Heritage Building and Preservation Trust. So currently the main activity of that group is the Kawi Cottage in Riverton, which has been worked through. There's some outstanding building department issues that are being dealt with, and that would be handed over to a local trust, and that committee would wind up. So it's taken a bit longer than envisaged, but trying to get there.
Thank you, Councillor Runcorn.
Thank you. I sit on the Communities Against Harm Waihapai, and I just thought about giving an update on a group meeting. Harm reduction network community is well underway. It commenced in October 2024 and will be launched in the next 7 to 10 days. There's another few streams in there. I'll send the links out to all the councillors in the mayor.
Thank you. Oh, there's no further.
The mid-dome Wilding Pine thing, I see it was a site meeting and we've had years, etc. Is there, are you satisfied with?
Yeah, so that's a good point, actually. I should have actually talked about that. So, yeah, Councillor Wilson, Councillor O'Brien and myself went out last Wednesday. It was quite a good session. So we had reps from DOC, Environment Southland, Forestry Company and the Mid-Dome Wilding Trees Trust. We've been doing a lot of good work over the years in terms of trying to eradicate the pest. The Jobs for Nature funding that they had has dried up. So basically they're sort of at the peak of clearing it, and with the spread of the seeds from the forestry, it's kind of reversing all the good work that they've done. So we ended up going up to West Dome and having a look at the actual ramifications of it. So you've got the forestry on the one side and you've got your biodiversity and natural sort of dock estate on the other side, and seeing the spread was quite an eye-opening experience. So they were wanting to see what Southland District Council can do, and we are having those discussions almost regionally at the moment too, between ourselves, ES, and also with Gore, in terms of trees have been such a big topic with strontium and their various states, and the team have been quite helpful in terms of providing the information that we can do, and also what we can't do, because it's also driven from a national policy statement. So there is the NES-CF is trying to do a nationally consistent approach, which kind of restricts some, but there are mechanisms that councils can use, and between both ES and us, so we are having those conversations as well. And yeah, I'm going to continue to work with the trust and the team as well to see what can be done. A lot of it is around, there's calculators now, wilding pond calculations that come through with new forestry. The biggest challenge that we've got, well, that they've got as that trust, is the existing forestry that, and then you've got the new stuff coming in where the rules, and there might be some mechanisms to do stuff, but you've also got the stuff that's been there for a while. And it's, yeah, I mean, there's a bit of irony in terms of forestry being planted that's causing a problem that a whole lot of government money's gone into trying to solve. So it's an interesting situation. The trust have been doing a lot of good work over the years and to try and address it. But do Matt and Tom, do you want to add anything?
One of the key points to highlight of what was being learned was that the trusts had been originally working with my tree through rubber consortium, and then different trees, different problems. What was really highlighted is that Douglas fir and an increase, say 20 years ago, of Douglas fir plantations and the way they come and see that particular species, and we saw it up on conservation land. When that spreads, it does have the ability to get above the Matagari and the Manuka shrubs, and the risk being that the 20-year blocks of that spreading is a big problem coming, like a ticking time bomb. You hear things like the right tree, right place be said, and then there's all these policies and standards, but the question really is what can be done. And I don't know what those policy statements versus what our ability, I mean, could we around the council table say, let's just put a moratorium on Douglas fir specifically and consents in the meantime until we figure out the right place for that tree, because the evidence of what we've seen is, you know, give it 40 years and all those mountain tops will just look like North America.
I think the right place is Canada.
Yeah, that's quite a daunting map that they showed with, like they showed the spread in red, and the whole sort of lower half of the South Island over years, if it's left unmanaged, becomes.
I'll give it a crack, since I learned something last week. I'll make a motion that I think Southland District Council should put just a moratorium on Douglas fir plantation consents. I don't know if legally we can do that, but I want to make that motion.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not that easy. And the booty, I'm looking over here, but the conversations I've been having with the team, the district plan is the kind of mechanism that you can work with within the national policy statement. And I'm looking at the booty to correct me if I'm wrong here in terms of the technical details. But I was actually reading on the plane on the way up to the North Island last week the national policy statement to try and work out where it all fits. And I know that the team have been doing a lot of work around that as well. But it's it's not that easy, is it? Do you want to sort of?
Oh, well, I'm going to give a very short response to what you've described anyway. A moratorium is not something we can do. You all know what the RMA rules are. If we even started something today at the back of the motion, we are looking at a very good length of time before we could get into the budget, and I'm sure there are other ways we can handle that, but it's definitely an issue that is front and center of our minds to address.
And I think the fact that it's currently being worked on regionally in conjunction with Environment South, and we had a discussion at the last mayoral forum with staff present there around looking at, because the forestry companies have to supply forestry management plans and everything as well now. So looking at and using those wilding pine calculations. ES have policies around good neighbour policies, which we found out that day potentially aren't as effective as they could be. But yeah, looking at all the different tools that we could use to do it.
Well, it's the environmental issue coming forward, and then the funding issue coming forward. Yeah, it's just slow but runaway track.
Yeah. But then also on the other scale, a whole sector that's a sector that's doing its work. There's two sides to the whole thing as well, and there will be challenges to any changes that we make in the district plan as well. So it's a very interesting topic.
So through you, Worship, I guess furthermore to what you're saying, there was a bill So Tom McLean released a bill yesterday.
Yeah.
Called the Climate Change Response Emissions. So it's a new bill, the Climate Change Response Emissions Trading Scheme Forestry Conversions Amendment Bill will restrict wholesale conversions on farmlands to exotic forestry by stopping LUC 1 to 5 land from entering the ETS and new ETS registrations on LUC 6 land. So that was just released yesterday.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, regardless of that legislation, a lot of forestry has been planted.
Yeah.
A lot of the forest identification species, which were historically identified as Contorta and Yugo, are now Douglas fir on massive takeoff sites within Southland, which are affecting those hill country properties at considerable cost. And one of the issues was who's responsible, how do they pay for it, and highlighted some funding issues. I am aware that there was some funding released 2 days ago for some areas which fit under the Madone Wall and Pine Trust area, and that control work is actually being undertaken today. But it doesn't stop the fact that I've got a meeting with the Wakatipu Wildland Trust next week. They have the same issues, and I guess they've been asking their council up there around their responsibilities for that particular area. Affected stakeholders are asking us as a council where our liabilities lie, which should be highlighted. It's just the ongoing, I guess, costs and responsibilities around that have to continue.
Yeah, and you're working in like you've just pointed out, and Cameron pointed out as well, you've got a moving field in terms of legislation coming out. And I mean, when earlier on the triennium, it was the NES PF, and then it became the NES CF, which actually gave, so it is moving, and some might argue not in the right direction, but yeah, it's a challenging space.
And the last point I'd like to make is that the feedback that I have got within the very limited time that I've had anything to do with this is that there is still an attitude, like a parochial attitude towards this. And it's a national issue.
Yeah.
And it needs to be treated accordingly. So anything that this council can do to highlight the massive risk, not only to Southland as a regional province, but to the country as a on the whole, would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah.
Just also noting that the forestry that we were observing, we're also actively working on a forestry plan to address the issue. I know we can't make a sweeping motion to stop Douglas fir overnight, but we do need to also look at ourselves as a council, as a forestry portfolio owner, and check. But I went home and looked at our commercial 30-year management plan, and there's not exactly anything written about addressing wilding. So I don't know if there's another management plan, but we should, if we can't do anything regulatory to put in things, we can at least
make sure we're not contributing to the problem. Yeah.
And set a good example on that. Good practice.
Yes. Cool. So that's just in the interest of time, if there's nothing else on that mayor's report, I will move it from the chair. Do I have a seconder? Yep. Councillor O'Brien, for the motion, all those in favour, please say aye. Anyone against? That is carried. Okay, so we've now got item 7.4, which is the Nightcaps Hall installation of a new diesel tank retrospective unbudgeted expenditure request on page 51. And welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Worship. Pretty straightforward report. We go to buy a new diesel tank for the Nightcaps unit. We sourced a second-hand one, tough for diesel, which is really good. However, and we paid for that in the previous financial year. However, the installation and specification of the tank comes in this financial year, and that wasn't budgeted for. However, we are looking to pay for this out of any remaining general maintenance budget that we have and the remaining.
So did you do an unbudgeted income report for the diesel in the tank?
Well, hopefully there's some savings here because we didn't use it.
Like you say, a pretty straightforward report. Are there any questions for Mark?
No, happy to move.
Thank you, Councillor Musi. Seconded by Councillor Chamberlain. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Anyone against? That's carried. Thank you. And we now have the unbudgeted expenditure report for the Ojai Railway Fund March 25 funding round. It's on page 55 of your agenda, and welcome, Sam.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Sorry, and I've got Kath behind me online as well. G'day, Kath.
Morning, everyone.
I'll effectively, through Your Worship, hand over to Catherine Cowie, our community liaison officer, to take us through this report.
Thanks, Sam. So yeah, likewise, this should be pretty simple. So the purpose of this report is to seek approval from Council for unbudgeted expenditure from the Ohio Railway Fund Committee. So the yearly budget is 55,000 and the allocations for the 24-25 year total 66,747. So this requires unbudgeted expenditure approval of 11,747. So yeah, happy to take any questions about that.
Thank you, Kath. Any questions?
I'll just move.
Happy to second.
Cool, we've had a move, we've had it seconded. Doesn't appear to be any more questions or discussion, so we're moving at a pace now. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Anybody against? That is carried. Thank you, Kath. Thank you, Sam. And just like that, we're 15 minutes later than scheduled, but we've managed to pull back some time. So I would like to thank everybody for your attendance at our meeting today. And I'll do our closing karakia before we go and have a look at all things great happening in the country. Kia hora te marino, kia whakapapa panamu te moana, pahurahi ma tātou I te rangi nei, aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou I a tātou katoa, Homie, Louie, Tai, and peace be widespread, may the sea be like greenstone, a pathway for us all this day. Let us show respect for each other, for one another, bind us all together. Thank you.